Thank you for attending, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Paige. Hi, I don't know if any of you have been at the previous talks. I gave a talk in March about Queen Elizabeth and the as a proto-environmentalist leader, and she was traveling around the country, and they were all planting flowers and gardens and all of these things to be able to greet her with flowers all the time. And it had a great deal to do with why England is such a green and garden mad country. And of course, when the English came over here to settle, they brought a little bit of that green desire and green the garden mentality over to America as well. Big country, a lot of people had a lot of concerns. It got a little dissipated here. It's not quite as strong as it is, but there are garden shows all over the country, as I'm sure some of you know. And then last month we had a historic broom maker making broom out of broom. And what I did there was start a little PowerPoint just to give you some historical context. And I hope everybody did get the kits, as Paige mentioned. And then we'll move into Jennifer. But I just want to introduce Jennifer Radcliffe, the historical die maker that I met. Well, I'll get to that in a second, actually. But Jen, I'll come back to you, and be prepared to pronounce your medieval name for everybody.
Okay.
So, okay, now I can't share screen again. It's back to only host. So I'll just have a quick PowerPoint. Whoops. Okay, not sure what to do.
Try it again. Try
again?
Yeah.
Sure. Still says only host.
Okay. Are you hitting the green portion by chance, or the little arrow?
Oh, I see. You're right. Okay, so here we go. Share. Sorry, my fault. Okay, so there we have a little on the side. We have a thing called a manicule, which appears in manuscripts a lot. And Jennifer, I might ask you questions as we're going along. Do you get these recipes? I mean, instructions from historical manuscripts and
I do actually. I don't mean to interrupt, but yes, I do actually. Most of the recipes, if they actually published a recipe, it would be more in what we would be familiar today with as a cookbook, as opposed to a specific dyer's recipe book. They were very secretive about their specific dyes and their recipes for those dyes. But yeah, there are dye recipes, but the majority of them come from what we would consider today a cookbook from the kitchen.
Why were they so secretive? Because that's how they made money, and they didn't want to give away their livelihood?
Absolutely. Yep. If they could make that color, they were the only ones to make that color, and that would put them up one more rung above the general get it out of your garden type of dye. And if they could maybe create green from onion skins that we're going to talk about today and indigo, they would not give that recipe up for the world, because that would allow them to charge more for their dyed goods. And it was, they took the grave.
So you're learning a trade secret here today. So I just wanted to, this is my book, as I talked about it, and I connected with and this is our Instagram handle. And there's Jennifer at Village Handiworks, recently transported from Florida to Rochester, New York. Quite a different climate, right?
Yep.
And do you teach how to do this in your shop?
Well, I would, except my shop is not equipped with any stove or heating system other than hot plates. So what I do is I actually this spring I have a fire pit in my backyard. I have an iron tripod. I have the copper pots that are ginormous. I will be actually doing a lot of period dye demonstrations and workshops right here in my own backyard.
Oh, wow. Well, if anybody gets too hot in Texas and wants to take a trip to Rochester in the summer. Let me just, got a little ahead of myself. So I had her come on Shakespeare Therapy for we run an Instagram show every Sunday. Since the pandemic started, we began on Midsummer's Day, which is June 24th. A lot of people don't know that, but that is sort of antique Midsummer's Day, because that was also the solstice, but you always can't necessarily pin the solstice to the exact same date, but that's generally the date for it historically. And so if you don't get everything on here, do you have videos on your website, Jen, on how to do this at all?
Not yet, but they will be posted.
Okay, so trade secret still, but you
Yeah.
can see us go through this onion dyeing process on Shakespeare Therapy if you have a hankering to. But so what I wanted to talk about, Shakespeare only mentions the dyer's hand in sonnet 18, I think. And so there's a couple of different feelings about that. He's talking about being steeped in ink because of the writing. And certainly writers of those days, because you're putting a quill into an ink pot, typically people who were writing, scribes and all that, had ink in their fingernails and ink on their hands and all that stuff. They didn't have these hand sanitizers all over the place to clean their hands off easily, nor running water necessarily. So you could kind of identify scribes and people who wrote a lot by their hands. So he says, like the dyer's hand, I am steeped in what I worked in. And then he goes on to say potions of Eisel, which is ink. So, and ink was made from gall much of the time. And there's some great videos online about how to make historic ink. We should probably do that at one point too. But anyway, so some people believe that that is a hat tip to Edward Dyer, who was a prominent poet at the time, and that he contributed to Shakespeare, or he was Shakespeare, or whatever it is. But there are a lot of controversies and arguments about Shakespeare. The more you get into it, the more controversial it gets. You know, the people who just dip their hands in, pun intended, I guess, and just get the nice, lovely warbling woods surface of it. But anyway, so that dips into a little bit of the controversy, but it's the only mention. So, but he does mention fabric a lot, and he mentions colors a lot. And one of the sort of struggles I had when we were doing the book, because the title is All the Plants in Shakespeare, and then HarperCollins kept coming back to me and saying, can we cut? And I said, we could cut it if you change the subhead. So peach was one, but Sumia had done such a gorgeous peach, and I didn't want to cut the fruit, but it's never mentioned as a fruit in Shakespeare. It's only mentioned having to do with peach colored satin. And this is like 3 pile for the mercer, this Master Caper, who we think there's various different people, I'm sure you don't care, but might be Philip Sidney, who kept ordering new clothes. And peach was a very popular color. And one of the resources that we know from this, and Jennifer, I don't know if you've used this, is Queen Elizabeth's gift rolls. She reigned for almost 45 years. So there was the practice of giving and getting gifts every New Year's. And we have over half of them. We have 25 at the moment that my friend Jane Lawson has transcribed, and there's in a book, and you can see every year who gave what to whom, and people gave her clothing quite a bit. And so you can watch the trends. Here's another part of the peach, a pair of stockings thou hast, and peach colored ones. And so that's in Henry IV part 2. So again, we've got talking about the peach and as a color. But in the gift rolls, Queen Elizabeth did get peach as a gift from Genoa, usually boxes and crates of peach. So it was known, it was used. The fruit wasn't necessarily grown in England, but the color was very, very popular. So we put, and carnation is another one that shows up a lot. So it was very much like the Pantone color of the year situation that we have now.
Yeah, Garrett, I can help explain those colors too.
Great.
Where
Great.
they came from. How did we just take a peach stone and make it into a color? No,
I would
but
imagine
can
not.
explain that as we go further along.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to like set the stage for people again, well, pun intended. And I'm sure you know all these colors. If you look in the gift rolls, there's beaver and Brazil. And my favorites are maiden hair and maiden blush. Maiden hair is sort of a brownish beige, grayish, there you go, hair color. And maiden blush, of course, is a little pink. And maiden blush was very popular a lot of times for petticoats and underclothing and all of that kind of stuff. And and Murray, I wish I could see your faces. Does anybody have a guess as to what Murray is? Jen, you want to tell us what Murray is?
I'd like to, but there's so many. There's a book I have that I've kind of perused several times called Elephant's Breath. And
Nice.
that's actually, that's a color, elephant's breath.
Yeah.
I can't say I've ever seen an elephant's breath, but apparently it was a color of the period. So Murray, I'm thinking it's going to be like a cranberry, dark cranberry kind of color.
Yep, cranberry mulberry.
Yep.
That kind of deep, yes. Sometimes they describe it as a blood color.
Oh,
But anyway, and like, do you happen to know what color Pantone color of the year is this year?
if I looked at my Pantones, yes, I could, but not off the top of my head. Garrett, fill me in.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh,
It's
that's
very
right. Periwinkle.
Periwinkle.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the theorists have it as the reason that they chose this is to just calm us all down after what we've been through with the pandemic and the lockdown and all of this kind of stuff, because it's a very soothing color. But you'll see when these Pantone colors come out, you will find a lot of clothing in the stores that pay attention to the whole Pantone thing and try to stay on trend. Award shows, a lot of times when I was covering this sort of thing, and we knew the Pantone color of the year, then we would see how many people showed up. And there was the same situation with Queen Elizabeth. Here's another one. Carnation was another one. I never thought of taking it out, but it's interesting that the three mentions in Shakespeare, two of them are colors, and the only one that's a flower is in The Winter's Tale, when Perdita gives this huge, long sort of speech about colors. It's very difficult for people to gloss what she's talking about, but each one has a very specific meaning. And I think because there hasn't been a lot of focus on the plants, there hasn't been a lot of delving deep. And I did an academic paper on what this means generally, but it's interesting. So it shows up as carnation ribbon in Love's Labour's Lost, which was an early play, and then Henry V, which is sort of mid. Sometimes they place it later, but there's a lot of evidence to move it earlier. And it says that Falstaff didn't like carnation. Now, the interesting thing about carnation is that it's also related not just to the flower, but carnal and flesh colors. So, and if you're a carnivore, all of that. And I think we don't have Bob in here. I asked, oh, there he is. Okay, I call this guy Bob. But it turns out I was giving a talk. It's Francis Drake's brother, and his name is Thomas. So he looks a little cross that I was calling him Bob. But anyway, he has a carnation, probably leather jerkin. They did this thing called pinking the leather. And so these little perforations in there, maybe for cooling effects, because you can get really hot wearing leather, although it was colder then. And I don't know how great a painter this is, because take a look at his hand right there.
Yeah.
But probably, very likely, he was getting married. This was often a color if you were getting married, and he's got a carnation, a little vase of carnations floating above. It was also, it wasn't like the corsage that you get for, from a cheap prom date at that point. It was a very prized flower that had this spicy scent, and, people loved it. And it was quite popular with Queen Elizabeth. It shows up, I didn't count how many times it shows up in her gift rolls, but she was constantly getting gifts of carnation clothing of one kind or another. So here's some other references. There's a resource, that pinpoints where Queen Elizabeth was every day of the year and what she was doing. And so here, Diana in purple cloth of silver, fringed with gilt bells, nymphs, two in carnation cloth of silver, and purple cloth of silver, two in bold cloth of gold, all garnished with gilt belts. And then you get velvet carnation, cloth of gold, purple velvet, all of that kind of stuff for a big. And this is not long after she ascended to the throne. She ascends in 1558. November 17th, 1558 is when Mary dies, and then she takes the throne in 1559. So this is not long after. Now, one of the things that and you can go through, he didn't highlight these, but very similar to who's getting what. Philip Sidney was very, very, as I said, so you've got green taffeta and canvas streaked with blue and canvas streaked with red and silver, hose of crimson velvet, carnation color, green leather, blue leather, white. He was a big clothes horse, if you will. Carnation cassock, so same kind of thing. And rabbit skins, those were popular. Anyway, so this is called the Rainbow Portrait of Queen Elizabeth, and you've got this bright orange. This is an idealized picture of her with the, I think I used it for the garden one too, but there was a rainbow of color. People think of history as sort of brown and sepia toned and muted and all of this stuff because that's what you get. But as Jennifer will show, there were very bright colors. They loved every kind of, when a new color came in. So you can see why these people hoarded their recipes for a new color, because it was, and orange tawny tended to be like a king-like color, lion, but sometimes they called it lion. There we go. And so now, we're going to talk about onion skins. And Jennifer, I met Jennifer at the Medieval and Renaissance Conference in Kalamazoo. I don't know what year that is, maybe 2018. I'm not really sure what year.
Yeah, was it at the latest 2018? It might have been 2017, but it was several years ago now. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Before we all couldn't go anywhere for a while.
Yes.
And I was fascinated with the fact that you can just take, you're supposed to, I read a recipe that you're supposed to have onions and garlic every day for maximum health. So, and I recommend parsley with that if you're going to do that, so not to torture the people around you and get rid of that smell. Chlorophyll takes away the onion and garlic smell, but that you can have this everyday thing that's in your kitchen and make this extraordinary dye from it. So how did you get into this, and how long have you been doing it?
Oh my golly, thanks, Garrett. I got into it, way back in the really early days. I think we were still heating with wood fire in a stove, but I was in 7th grade and my art teacher required us to do a weaving, and for some reason that struck in my head, and I said, someday I want to have a sheep and shear it and card my own wool and comb my own wool and spin my own wool and blah, and that just stuck in my head. And 20 some odd years later, I was grown up and we had the opportunity to buy a farm, and we got the farm. And at that exact same moment, I had met, through a food co-op of all places, a woman who was a spinner. She had sheep. She wasn't a dyer, but she was a hand spinner, and she had her sheep. And so that led me into learning how to spin. And then, so I was spinning my own wool on a drop spindle. And from there, I needed to color it. It was something I've always wanted to do. So I went ahead and started learning about, in Western New York, we have, unlike Florida, which grows sand and palm trees, which neither are good for dyeing. Western New York, where we lived for 25 years, where we had sheep and Angora goats for mohair, and we had a llama who also gave us fiber, and dogs and ducks and cats and kids and chickens and all other kinds of fiberless animals. I learned that so many weeds and things we throw away, like onion skins, are beautiful dyes. Like Queen Anne's lace is a beautiful soft yellow dye. So many things in nature just give us yellow, whether it be a soft baby yellow or a vivid bright yellow like a weld, which I'll show you shortly. They're still yellow, but then you over dye them with something like cochineal, which is a bug on a prickly pear cactus that England absolutely would have been importing. And that is how that peach color came about. Because
Interesting.
they used a lot of yellow and very little cochineal, which I don't have examples on me other than to say you can go from, here, I'll
I
use
have this
my-
that you made for me of the silk scarf.
Yes,
Was
yes.
that cochineal?
Yes,
Look at that color.
absolutely. So
That's-
you can, yes, and you can go from that vibrant pink to this blood red just by varying the pH of your water. So getting carnation was a very thrifty way of using cochineal, which was imported, and they used, but using very little of it, cost effective, with lots of, say, onion skins, they were able to create that beautiful carnation color, and they were able to use a lot of it.
So did somebody say, hey, I love all these peaches. Can you make a color that's like this?
Most
And then
likely,
somebody had to figure it out.
most likely, or most likely is probably that most likely is what would have happened. But then there are, those dyers that just experiment. And they just go, they maybe went to market one day and the cochineal was available, but they only had maybe X amount of pence, or, just a few little, not even dollars, but, just a few cents. They could buy just a very little of it, but they wanted to experiment with it. And that's really probably how I think these colors came about, was more experimentation. And then they went crazy. And of course, the royalty had the most money. Therefore, they could spend on these new dyes that were being imported. The cochineal initially came from Mexico. The Brazil wood, of course, was bark that came from Brazil. Logwood, again, was another that gave us purple. And again, that also came from South America. So these dyes.
Well, there is, Brazil is a color that's listed in Queen Elizabeth's gift rolls.
Yes, absolutely. And that can give you purples to blues, depending on your water, your heat, just kind of a lot of chemistry in that. But
I'd
yes,
love to see some of the import rolls. I should look into
oh yes,
what they were looking at.
absolutely.
Or what they were importing and how much and when. That would be a fascinating next
Yeah,
sort of step
yeah.
with all of this. Anyway, so where are we? We'll get back to a little bit of the color color
Yeah.
situation, but I wanted to, where are we? Because they got these kits. I sent you what they've got, the muslin bag and all of that kind of
Good,
stuff. So
good.
what is the next step? I hope you guys all have done, I guess
not-
that is the first step. The kits
No,
were the first.
yeah, we can certainly walk you through it if you're at all confused. I'll have all of my information available to you. But just quickly before we move on to that, I wanted to just show this light pink, which is also cochineal, on a Georgette scarf, and it just goes to darker, 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 and that's just one of the colors from cochineal. And then of course indigo and woad, massive color.
Woad. Yeah.
And you take woad, you take something dyed in onion skins, like this little hanky, and you over dye it with woad. Blue and yellow make green. So now you have yellows and blues and greens and all shades. So that's where all of these colors really came from in that period.
It's interesting because you don't see blue and blue greens. Green was popular, but hard, it looks like. And you don't see them show up as much as all this array of, from everything from gray and beige. There was ash, there was dove. Dove had a little bit of a pink in it.
Yep.
But gray, a lot of those colors, and red and purple, but not so much
Yeah.
blues. And I
Right.
know from just describing colors, you don't see, Shakespeare certainly doesn't describe anybody as having blue eyes. The best you could have is a gray eye, which was probably blue.
Yes.
But,
blue
and the
was not a
blue
color.
eye was the hag color of cataracts and that kind of thing, when it was
Yes.
described that way.
And I forget, and I could certainly look it up, but the word blue was not even
Yeah.
invented, let alone associated to a color, like, for instance, the blue on this yarn here. It wasn't even associated with the sky or eyes or yarn for so many years. And I have to remember, it was right about this time that Shakespeare was doing all his work, that the word blue came about and
Starts to come in. But if you look at painting history, you'll see vivid blue satins come in the
Absolutely.
latter 17th century, 18th century, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So it's
And
just interesting.
it is. And
So, okay, so
came from minerals, and they did not call them blue. They called them like azure, or they called them the name of the stone as opposed to generalized blue.
that's true. Lapis, a lot of lapis, and yeah, okay. So, so what do they do next with their
So,
their
so
kit?
at this point, I think everybody, I hope, has done the mordanting process, which is where you take your scarf, which I have here in a bowl, and you put it in the alum and soaked it. And now it's just, right now, it should be just maybe a wet, or possibly if you dried it, a dry piece of fabric. Mine happens to be still wet. And then what happens next is the onion skins. And I actually have prepared some here to show that what we do is, of course, the cheesecloth, which I hope everybody was able to obtain. You can get it anywhere, in the grocery store, in the fabric shop. And then you put your onion skins in it. I
I think they may have sent out silk. Is Paige there? I think you sent out silk scarves, isn't that right?
Exactly. And that was the wet thing.
Right.
So the wet thing was this is silk.
Okay.
And then the cheesecloth was to hold the onion skins in place. So here are the onion skins I've saved. And my kind of running line is, you throw your onion skins away, I covet them. And so people do get a chuckle out of it. And I do, people send me onion skins because they're so fun. And so what I did then after that, which some may or may not have gotten to, was to tie it into a knot, into a bundle, the pot of hot water, which I'm going to try and take my laptop over, and it may
into the cheese, the onion skins go in the cheesecloth, and then they go into the pot.
And they go into the pot. And
Okay.
Where's the pot? There it is. And so after an hour, the cheesecloth with the onion skins in it, that releases the color, and that therefore turns into, after you take it out, you've got this cheesecloth filled with wet gloppy. As I pour it all over, hold please.
Can you do this with, like, if people are knitters out there, could you put a sweater? Could you use knitted fabrics or
knitted fabrics? It needs to be a natural fiber. You could use wool. You could use a wool, mostly wool, like maybe a 60-40 wool to polyester or wool acrylic blend fiber in there. You could use yarn. I have here, this is some yarn that I hand spun and dyed with onion skins. And again, another, and you can see, I hope you can see the two different colors, just depending on the fiber that is put in there. This is 100% merino wool. Woo, and the color's really not showing up as beautiful sunshine gold and yellow as I would like it to. Maybe right here, you can see maybe the darker yellow. And then this is just 100% like not one specific fiber content. So the colors are different, but depending on the amount of onion skins you put in your sack, this was just about an ounce, but it just depends. And you can see that the bag is yellow, the onion skins are still bright, you know, almost orange at this point.
Mm.
And this goes into the pot of plain water, and it goes to bring it to a boil and then let it simmer for an hour.
Okay, and I just got to see the chat because I
Oh,
didn't see
good.
the request to stop sharing, but I did
Oh, I'm sorry.
fortunately intuit that. No, it's my fault. And yes, those were onion seeds. And yes to the Egyptian blue, the color Egyptian blue that George Washington Carver created. Absolutely. And what was the other? A woman named Grace says she uses brown onion skins to boil with eggs to differentiate them from the other eggs, which is brilliant.
Absolutely. Those are great.
All
Yep.
kinds of great, you know, clever uses for things that we often throw away or hopefully
Yep.
compost, whatever that is. But
Exactly. And what another fun thing that I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, and what I did with her this past Easter was after I boiled my onion skins for this demonstration, I took each individual, let me see if I can find a big one. I took individual onion skins and wrapped them around an egg,
oh,
and they
why?
stuck because they're wet.
Huh?
And then you, so they're all wrapped around the egg, and then you hard boil the egg. And when I didn't save one, I should have, when the egg is finished boiling, it comes out mottled like a stained glass window. All the lines on these onion skins show up on the egg.
Mm.
And then, so when one overlays another, you can see on the egg where it was cut or ripped. And then you put another one on and you can see on the egg the lines. It's just a beautiful, natural way to play, and certainly they're edible. But
Yeah.
it's one more way to play with onion skins.
She likes that idea. I like that idea too. And it did make me think of, like, because everything was prized and you couldn't get things at the corner store, people found ways to use everything. And there are big movements to go back to that less waste, more use with everything that you have kind of thing. So
after you extract the color for your silk scarf or your wool yarn or whatever you're going to dye, you still have the availability to reuse these onion skins on eggs. And does it have to be Easter? Heck no, it could be like Tuesday. Nobody cares. It's just a fun project.
And do they not ever lose their color? You can just boil them over and over again. It doesn't dissipate.
They do dissipate. There is, if you it would be hard to see because of the steam, but here's your onion skin bag, and it's in the big dye pot, and you take your tongs and you pull it out of the dye pot. You will most likely often see yellow water running out of this, you know, as you hold it over your pot. When that water becomes clear, that means the color is exhausted, is the, you know, technical term, but it means the color's all gone and
Okay.
you need to compost them. But
Mhm.
if you take this bag and do what I did, and there was still yellow coming out when I took this out of the water and put it in a bowl, these onion skins are still really good use for not just those eggs, but when you're making chicken soup or turkey, the color from these onion skins just goes right into the soup, and you know, they're in a sack, so you
Yeah.
can just go ahead and just, you know, color your soup a little bit more yellow.
That's nice because then it gives it a sort of rich, delectable color, because chicken soup can occasionally look a little gray.
Yes, absolutely. And this just brightens a lot of chefs. A couple of chefs I personally know, and I'm sure there are a lot of chefs, obviously I don't know, that do it, but they when they cut their onions up for the soup, they just cut the onion up and throw the whole thing in, skin and all. And that just makes their soup that much more beautiful. But
So how long are you boiling this for with the?
about 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
And then, take your tongs and lift it up and look at it and go, huh, yeah, okay, there's still color coming out of my bag. And then look in the pot and go, huh, I like that color. And at that point, there's plenty of color in your dye bath in your pot. And then we will do right now, we will take, oh, wait, hold on. I don't mean to make you get all, I know. I need an assistant, but the assistant's in California. So, oh golly, so now you have to see a face up. Okay. So here's you can't even see it.
Oh, we caught the color for a minute there.
Yeah. So, this is the one that I've dyed.
That's great.
And it's just a gorgeous, beautiful dark yellow, but you can still see, I don't know, can you see that there's still yellow coming out of that water when it's dripping? Yep. So then I can take this one out because this was by the magic of television to show you what it looks like.
Right. The Martha Stewart effect.
Exactly.
Grace suggested we color our masks to make them a little more interesting. That's a great idea as
I
well.
think that's a fabulous idea. And then this is, to me, chilled, and silk wool, it matters very, very much to make sure your wool going into your pot is at least as hot as, or close to being as hot as the water in your pot. Silk doesn't need that, which is why we're doing silk scarves and not wool, but the silk goes in to the pot and you can see it's already starting to color. It's already changing color. Yep, it is.
And that's because of the mordant that the kids soaked them in overnight.
Exactly. Yep. The mordant is allowing that color to get on there, and it's gonna stay. It won't, like, if we didn't use it, the color would wash out.
Okay.
So because
that's a good point. What happens when you wash this stuff later?
Absolutely nothing. Because we used the mordant. Had we not used the alum mordant or any of the other mordants that are out there, which are all natural salts, if we had not used a mordant, the colors would fade out, wash out. And people like to dye with berries or beets or like blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. The colors are stunning, but Mother Nature made them fugitive, which means they will go away. When we get a spot on our shirt because we dropped the blueberry on our new white shirt, the color's real pretty, but then we wash it and it turns gray. And sometimes you can get, but then it's a stain, it's not a dye. And therefore, because of that, it's the technical term is fugitive. And it's just going to wash out, fade out. It's going to go away. Even if you use a mordant, which it's just not a good thing to use berries.
Well, because, we were talking about what else in Shakespeare helps with the dye. And of course, he's got blackberries and mulberries and dewberries and bilberries and currants and all of these berries, and all of those are fugitive colors.
Yes, look at me melt. Oh, like the Wicked Witch of the West. Yes, I love every one of those gorgeous colors, but they are fugitive. And in the 1500s, or still even today, we would still rather eat those fruits. Because food was, unless you were royalty or up, food was more important than a dye color. So of course, people would rather eat them than waste them on a dye color.
We have a question in the chat, but I just wanted to also say quickly about, like, he also talks about staining your fingers with the mulberries. And so, yes, but of course we're able to wash all of that stuff off eventually. Right. The question is, for wool and cotton yarn, before adding them to the hot water pot, how do we get the yarn to the required hot temperature?
There you go. Okay. 2 different species right here. We have wool, which is a fiber that comes from, it's a protein fiber, just like our hair, which it's down to my waist, but just like Garrett's Most Beautiful Hair, it's a protein fiber. Wool comes from, you can technically call vicuña, alpaca, yak, sheep in your backyard, mutton, the sheep that are going to go turn into, tomorrow night's supper, all of the fiber that comes from those animals, your dog, your horse, all of that, your own hair is a protein fiber. Those fibers take different kind of processes to make them happen. Wool is very easy. Wool, if you were going to, after you did the mordant, and you need to bring it back up to temperature, put it in a pot and just slowly rise the temperature to about the same temperature as your dye bath is. If it's cotton, that's a whole nother ball game. Cottons and linens, hemp, those are plant fibers. Plant fibers, yes, wool fibers, some of them come with a lot of lanolin, which is a kind of a waxy substance you want to wash off first. Much easier to do in the sink with a squirt of Dawn, you're done, all is right with the world. Cottons and linens and hemps, those are plant fibers. Those fibers need to be what we call scoured, and scouring is nothing more than putting them into a pot, but you need to put, say, Dawn dishwashing liquid and a chemical called soda ash, which we use in our laundry on a, it's mixed into our laundry detergent anyway. But those need to be boiled. The waxes have to come out of those plant fibers, the cottons, the linens, the hemps, in order for them to accept the dye. Because if you think of, like, say we did batik artists use wax to put on their fabric so that the dye does not go into those spaces. So if you have a t-shirt, for instance, that you want to dye with onion skins, it's perfectly feasible to do that. You just have to boil the blazes out of it with a combination of, I don't know, a teaspoon, let's say, of Dawn dishwashing liquid and another tablespoon or two of soda ash. Mix that up, make sure it's well dissolved, toss your t-shirt in there, let it boil.
Is soda ash something that you can get at the grocery store or hardware store, or where does one get soda ash?
Soda ash, you can get it at Dharma Trading, DHARMA. It's a great place. They do a lot of things for dyers. They have dyer prepared ready fabrics, and they have all the, different components that we need. And soda ash, it's not, I think we call it borax.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
all right.
Yeah, I mean, don't eat it because there are many other good things we want to eat, but but it's not a lethal chemical by any stretch, and it's just something you add to your Dawn. Really is the best one to go. Don't OxiClean ever, ladies and gentlemen. Never.
That gets it out. Yeah.
OxiClean will take your beautiful dye job and send it on its way down the drain. So don't OxiClean. But if you can find plain Dawn.
Okay. And the salt issue, I just wanted to address the alum, because I always think of alum. My father had alum sticks when he nicked himself shaving. I don't know if anyway,
Absolutely.
And we always had them in the house. He was a dentist. He said use them for canker sores, things like that.
And that's what they use.
Can it be any salt?
Well, sort of, but alum in particular, that's what the dentists use in your mouth to dry it out before they really work on it. So alum, obviously we eat it. It's also used in pickling. So that's why I had us use alum today, because it is something we actually can ingest without any consequences. Mineral salts, which is what alum is just one of several salts that we kind of classify into the mordant category. Among those, alum is the safest, the kindest, everything about it is dandy. It's the most commonly used mordant in the medieval period, especially, in Shakespeare. But they also had the opportunity, and they didn't realize it for like hundreds of years, but England in particular was very well endowed with copper, and especially tin from the West,
Yes.
Cornwall area, absolutely. Even iron, so copper, tin, iron, alum, and in 1856, chrome came aboard, but we don't care about that because it's nasty, it's dangerous, it's lethal, don't play with it. But those four they come right out of nature, wouldn't eat those either, but people were using tin lined copper pots
Right.
and their colors would come out brighter. They would
Mm.
use copper, plain copper pots. Copper gives off a greenish tint. So whatever they were dyeing would have more of a greenish tint. Iron, when they use just a plain iron pot, iron saddens a color. So where when I tell the kids I teach about this, alum is sort of like, hello, here I am. Copper will go green and we'll think of trees and leaves and things. Tin makes it happy. And they get a chuckle out of that. But an iron makes it sad. It's a sad color. And they get it because that's what really, it'll take your yellow. And here, I've got one right here. Here is our, I've got the best example right here. All right, this is a blanket that I wove from the wool of my Angora goats. And you can see that yellow?
Yeah.
Yellow is onion skins with weld as a mordant, happy, cheerful, bright. Then I dyed this hand spun yarn and I made this incredibly, I got other colors to show you. This shawl, and this is the same, not the same onion skins, of course, but this is onion skins using an iron mordant. So you can totally see the difference in color just because of the mordant. And
I'll just say a couple of things. What Debbie says, thank you for all the info. Excited about the possibilities. I'm not going to switch back to the PowerPoint. I had some portraits of Queen Elizabeth in black. I do want to talk about black for one quick second.
Sure.
And I also, I was at a dinner where this woman, the dinner was for people who had side hobbies, and she collected her dogs, because you said all of these animals,
Sure.
all of his shedded white fur. I don't know if it was a husky or one of those very fluffy dogs, and she made pillows out of it, these beautiful white pillows.
Absolutely.
And I was just thinking she could dye them gold with her onion skin. So if any of you have a big white fluffy dog or animal, I don't know if cats would work, but all that, all
Yep.
that fluff that's floating
Yeah.
around your house.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I did want to ask quickly, black was a very, very prized color back in the
Black.
16th century because it was hard to get a true black. So if you had black, and Queen Elizabeth at one point said that white and black were her colors because of the moon, and she was Diana and all of that kind of stuff. And
Absolutely.
why was it so hard to get black?
Black today in 2022, I still kind of cock my head and go, oh, black. Because it's just hard to obtain. The initial beginnings of, let's say, ink, which I also make for our calligraphers. I make ink for them. The soot from the candles that was gathered, that was just not gathered on purpose, but it just formed on the sides of the glass.
Accumulated, yes.
Thank you. Yep. That was initially used as part of black, but imagine scraping. How much are you getting every time you scrape the black out of your sconces? Then naturally, a naturally dyed black comes from, and here we are with our logwood. See this beautiful purple? Yeah, there it is. This is logwood. It was an imported wood bark from South America. And with that, they used, right next to it, indigo.
Yeah.
So if you had a dye with logwood and you mixed it with indigo, you would get black. Logwood, however, is one of those fugitive-esque or fugitive-ish dyes. This has not been out of the house. It has not sat in the sunlight. Logwood, if you put it in the sunlight, it fades and it turns gray. So it wasn't just that it was expensive to get, first of all, because you had to import the logwood. Secondly, you had to mix it with another dye, indigo or woad. England had a whole lot of woad. Indigo came from India. It was imported. If you were on the wealthier track, you could import your indigo, but it was not just a very simple attempt to get, let's just go like pull some black out of the ground and make it. You had to, it was a complex science to get black. And this is like almost my attempt at black. It was an attempt at black, but you can see it's dark purple, but it's next to indigo and onion skins, which is this green. And then the onion skins here, and you can see that the difference between an attempt for, oh, you can't really see it real well, an attempt at black versus that beautiful like eggplant purple. Can you see it? I don't know.
Yeah,
kind
a little
yeah.
bit.
A little hard. Yeah, it's a little hard, but black is just a very expensive color to produce.
Now, still today?
As a natural dyer, yeah, you
As a
just
natural
can't go pull black out of the, out of the ground, or you still have to mix it. You still have to
Okay.
put dyes together.
All right. Well, the other thing that when you were talking about the gold and all of that stuff, I've talked before about how women with money in those days used saffron to color their hair
Oh.
because Queen Elizabeth had,
Yes.
this red gold hair, and everybody wanted to copy her, so they used saffron. Women who couldn't afford that saffron got marigold. Could
Yes.
we use saffron and marigold as fabric dyes?
Absolutely. Saffron. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Saffron. You're going to be shelling out dollars for it because it's not cheap. But
No.
yes, you can use saffron. Buy the cheapest stuff you can find, because you're going to get
Costco.
yes, yes, you're going to get better quality. The more money you spend on it, the better quality color. But saffron absolutely gives you a stunning orange, yellow, goldy kind of color. And marigolds. I adore marigolds. They're I would say a dime a dozen, but that ain't right. It's like a penny a dozen. Yeah, I mean, marigolds, we can plant them in our yards. They
Yes, I was just
grow.
going to say.
I go to restaurants or public libraries or whatever, and their marigolds are out because they're cheap to plant. I deadhead those suckers and I take them all home. How about them?
Be careful, Dallas Library.
Yeah, I might be covering-
Marigolds.
But marigolds, deadhead the marigolds. When you deadhead a marigold plant, more marigolds will come and they will flower, which is for dyers, because you want more marigolds. Deadhead those, put them in an airy basket, or, I've even just flung them into a paper bag, or I think in the South, they call them sacks, paper sack, or, whatever.
Mhm.
Just don't put them in plastic because they need to dry out. Again, when you want to use them, it gives you a soft, I don't have anything marigold here. It gives you a soft yellow, which then is beautiful by itself, but then over dye it. With cochineal, you're going to get all kinds of oranges and, darker reds if you put a lot of cochineal in. Do it with indigo, they're marigold, and you've got a whole bunch of new greens to play with. So marigold is just one of those, I don't know, you're like, they're the gateway drug.
Well, I say that for Shakespeare because, we've had Broom, we've had we've had all kinds of, it's all the over 170 plants are a little doorway to some kind of adventure.
Absolutely.
And somebody said, thank you so much for this session. Can they contact you
Please, I would love it. Yep.
Great. She's at Village Handiworks on Instagram. That's how we keep in touch, the best way. And does anybody have any more questions, or if you do, just stick them in the chat, or like you said, you can
email me, Jen at villagehandworks.com.
Okay.
Or that's the best way to get a hold of me.
And you're at Renaissance fairs and things like that too. Is that right? Or not anymore?
Periodically, yes. Periodically I will. And as a medieval historian, we do the proper historical reenactment. And I do all the proper dyeing experiences. Renaissance festivals tend to, yes, we believe in fairies, but we didn't walk around with
We-
wings on our backs. Corsets with, they were not invented until the 1800s. So yes, we had structure to our garments, but we didn't walk around in corsets.
Bone
So-
crushing.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I do periodically do demonstrations at Renaissance festivals.
All right. Well, I hope, thank you for your comments. I hope you guys enjoyed a little taste. What is the end of, what should they have now? Should they have like a golden scarf of some kind?
Yes, they should have, when it comes out and it dries, and then you just put it in just some warm water to rinse it. They really should have just something, depending on how many onion skins they used on the darkness of the onion skins. They should have something that looks yellow. They could be light yellow, it could be dark yellow, it could be, this came out, this is what I did for us. And this is the color, and it's pretty similar to this one. When it actually, gets rinsed and dried, it'll be, again, another just gorgeous golden yellow. Just don't use OxyClean.
No, OxyClean. I was just going to remind them. Great. Thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoyed that. And
I do too.
yes, it is a gateway drug, all of this stuff.
Contact me. I love to serve that.
Great.
Thank you, ladies. That was a great presentation. We enjoyed all of the information, and we look forward to hopefully having some more programs with you in the future, maybe. So thank you all for attending. Please, we will send out the recording if you want to watch it again for more instructions or anything like that. So thank you all and have a great day.
Or night, in my case.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Good night, Garrett. Good day,
Bye
everybody.
from London. Thank you, Jennifer from Rochester. And
Welcome.
have everybody happy dying. in a
Happy
colorful
dying,
way.
yes.
Happy dying, sort of.
Bye.
Bye.